All right, just got the green light. We should be live here. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. This is the State of Tezos Q4 2022 Analyst Call. I am joined today by Tezos co-architect, co-founder Arthur. Arthur, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, I think you did a great job. My name is Arthur Breitman, and I'm a co-founder of Tezos Protocol and an early architect.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks for joining us today, Arthur, and thanks for everyone tuning in today. So today we're going to talk about all things Tezos. We'll give a high-level overview of what the Tezos protocol is, and then we'll dive deep into some of the quantitative and qualitative analysis. We'll primarily focus on Q4, but we'll take a broader approach to it as well. As you can see here, we're sharing the report. Some of the key highlights from the fourth quarter include year-over-year growth in both smart contract calls and transactions despite the bear market. Tezos closing the year with an all-time high in total value locked. 115% year-over-year increase in NFT sales. Tezos forklessly upgraded 4 times throughout the year, with Lima being the latest one. Tezos has a huge upgrade in the docket called Mumbai, which I'm sure we'll touch on in depth. And yeah, that one will include smart contract optimistic rollups and a bunch of other really cool tech that should move Tezos forward. So that's a high-level overview of some of the key insights from the fourth quarter. And yeah, let's get right into the nitty-gritty of it. So Arthur, if you don't mind, could you please provide a high-level overview of what is Tezos, right? What makes it unique? Maybe some of the governance, some of the forkless upgradability, anything you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, so Tezos is a piece of network. It's a network, and people have come up with various names for this type of things. You might call it a layer one blockchain, an L1 blockchain. It's a ledger. It's many things, and of course, there's many examples of ledgers like this around. What makes it unique is that Tezos is built with a governance model, which means that it can upgrade itself, it can continue evolving, it can get better over time, and it doesn't do so based on the decision of just a few people who say, "Oh, here's a new hard fork, take it or leave it." It's every single upgrade has to be ratified by the entire community of validators of the chain, and it's not just a nicety to have the governance like this in practice. It has led to very fast iteration on the chain, and so historically, this is why Tezos has been and remains at the forefront of what's possible in terms of technology. A pioneer of proof of stake, but also now a pioneer of extreme scalability techniques that are being deployed, starting in Mumbai in particular. So what makes it unique? It's a unique community of builders as well. It's a unique community of artists. It's a unique community of validators and engineers. That's what Tezos is.
Yeah, a lot going on in the Tezos ecosystem. And yeah, as Arthur said, the upgradability and the scalability, right? Two things that you hear everyone talking about on crypto Twitter these days. Tezos is making moves on that significantly. So let's scroll down here. Let's jump over into the financial overview. So you can see on the screen here, we've got Tezos' Q4 financial metrics. Things were pretty straightforward. I don't think we necessarily need to get into the financial metrics here, but if folks are interested, they can look at the numbers in the report. Let's hop down to the network overview, right? So we can see what's actually happening on chain.
Yeah.
So we got our account related metrics here. We've got active accounts, new accounts, and cleared accounts. So as you know, 2022 was a bear market, right? Things were pretty brutal. So, you're expected to see some numbers decline, but we saw a pretty significant jump in both active accounts and new accounts in the fourth quarter. So Arthur, can you talk about account usage on the network throughout 2022? And then if you want to zoom in on the end of the year, Q4, why we saw that spike, and then anything that may be leading to further momentum in 2023?
We had a spike in activity with the launch of the Manchester United collectibles. So that that was in wait, but that was in Q4 20. That was that was in Q4 2022. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think
yeah. It was.
Yeah.
Time has been a blur around the.
Q4 was a little while ago at this point.
Yeah. But yeah, so that brought that brought a lot of like hundreds of thousands of accounts created on the Tezos blockchain for this. So that's quite a boost in the activity. But it's not just been that. I think we've seen activities in various dApps picking up in general. I don't necessarily know what to attribute it. Like so in some cases, you have like a very specific a catalyst. In other cases, it's just it is what it is.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Look, so we could scroll down here. So, account related metrics spike in the fourth quarter, but not necessarily strong throughout the year. But if we go down to the network usage, right?
Yeah.
Network usage was actually up, if not fairly consistent, if not up throughout the year, which is an encouraging sign, right? So that means that
Yeah.
both users and devs, there may have been a little bit fewer, but the ones who were here are sticky and active. So you mind speaking on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy to have a lot of activity when you do things like yield farming, right? So you launch a token, you yield farm, and then everyone is going to be very, very active for a few months to collect it, sell it, and then it dies down. The benefit of building, I would say, like real use cases that make sense, that keep bringing people over and over, is that you have like a lot less churn. Like there's user retention. People who have been collecting art, for example, on Tezos, they have been doing it now for years, and they keep doing it. So it's a lot of our, I would say, activities are a lot more sustainable on the Tezos blockchain, which means that there's a lot better retention of that activity over time.
Yeah. And we mentioned it when we were talking about the network highlights, but there is the upcoming Mumbai upgrade, which will introduce smart contract optimistic rollups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So will that be on testnet or mainnet? Do we think that's going to lead to a boost in activity? What are your thoughts on that, and maybe some potential activity increases
Yes.
down the line?
So Mumbai lets you launch rollups natively on Tezos, and that's going to be in I think it's in 4 or 5 weeks that it activates, and that's activates on mainnet. It doesn't mean that in 4 or 5 weeks you're going to have a lot of rollups being launched immediately on Tezos, because it takes some time to develop. There's one rollup that exists that is a simple transaction rollup where you can make payments. But there's a few others in development. In particular, a high throughput rollup, which is intended as a smart contract layer, but with very high throughput. And there's also an EVM compatible rollup, which is essentially an implementation of the EVM, like an Ethereum compatible chain running as a rollup on Tezos. But these are not going to launch at the same time as Mumbai. They're enabled by Mumbai, but they will come probably later in a year.
Got it. Yeah. So Mumbai is going to get it going, and then we'll expect more activity to take place from those rollouts later in the year.
But more to your question, I would say, like, yes, I think he's going to bring a lot of activities on Tezos, because his rollups let you do something which I don't really think you can do in any other ecosystem at the moment. There's a lot of ecosystems who have positioned themselves in terms of modularity. So, for example, if you're in a Cosmos ecosystem, you might run your own chain, but it forces you to have a token, and it forces you to have validators, which you don't necessarily want to. Maybe you're NFT only, and you don't necessarily want to have a fungible token. And that makes it harder if you want to, like, if you need to bring your own validators, you might go on Polkadot and run a pirate chain. But again, you need to win an auction. You need to have an auction. You need to be approved, and so on and so forth. There's very few ecosystem where it's completely permissionless, right? Where you can just launch your own rollup and have all the throughput and the latency that you need. And I think offering that can attract a lot of developers who just simply don't have an alternative today. Like, it's the only place that I know of where you can do these things.
Yeah, and then speaking of developers with that, my understanding is that WebAssembly is going to be the first language with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So and there's different levels here. The rollups themselves are written in any language you want, so long as it compiles to WebAssembly. So that's really the nuts and bolts of any rollup kernel. We call them kernel, that you can run on Tezos chain. And WebAssembly is an emerging standard. A lot of programming languages today compile to WebAssembly. Rust is famous for this. There's a lot more support now in Python for converting to WebAssembly, assembly script. So there's many languages you can compile down to WASM, which means you can write your rollup in almost all of the major programming languages that are available today. And then within that, you can build application-specific rollup. Maybe you're building a game and you're building a rollup specifically for your game. but you could also be building a smart contract platform within a rollup. In which case, what is the virtual machine for that smart contract platform? Well, it could be WASM. It doesn't have to be WASM. It could be something else.
Yeah. Yeah. So the smart contract optimistic rollups coming soon to mainnet should be huge. Should lead to an increase in both user and development activity.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, but
yeah, I know the community's been looking forward to it, so that's going to be a
yeah.
big one. Okay, cool. So that's the network and financial overview. Let's hop down to the ecosystem and development overview. You can see here the numbers throughout the year. If we move down to the NFT table, so as Arthur mentioned earlier, NFTs are the primary source of activity on Tezos. It's not to discount the gaming TV and the DeFi, but nonetheless, NFTs are where the activity is happening today. And Tezos has 4 NFT marketplaces, which are comprising the majority of activity, which is to be expected, right? So, Arthur, could you please speak on just the Tezos NFT ecosystem in general, right? Any big players you're seeing in it? Anything from the marketplaces? Any major developments that are coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so I would say probably well, not even probably, like the 2 largest NFT marketplaces on Tezos are Object.com, which is fairly art focused, but also general. Like you'll see gaming NFTs on Object.com, and FXhash, which is which is like looking specifically at generative art. Then of course we have Teia, which is a lot of the communities that came from Hic et Nunc. There's also I think IKSwap, which is in Taiwan, and there's a lot, and I can't cite them all, unfortunately. I love all of them, but there's really too many to list. But I would say yes, like the 2 biggest players are clearly today FXhash and Object.com. It's true that especially like throughout 2022, most of the activities on Tezos has been NFT related. I think it's also an activity that has been very sustainable. You will see people launch NFT marketplaces, which are based on basically Ponzi economics to get a lot of volume, lots of activity. It gets everyone excited, and then it dies down. That hasn't really happened on Tezos. There hasn't been this type of like teaser activity, but as a result, we have something that's been a lot more stable and a lot more consistent through the years, including in bear markets.
No, totally. If we could scroll down real quick, Doug, you can see exactly what Arthur's speaking to, right? Like the NFT activity that throughout the bear market, right? It has been consistent, if not up. So I think that speaks to Arthur's point. Sorry for cutting you off, Arthur.
Yeah, and exciting things happening. I would say, you should have the people running these platforms. The latest one that I saw, but that's this quarter, is Object.com is launching a Object One, which is a curated one of one edition marketplaces, and I'm sure there's a lot of others. I don't want to do a disservice to everyone who's innovating and creating things in a space, but it would be hard for me to go out and list everything.
There's a lot going on, so tough to name everything, but I think you hit on some of the larger points. So just to add some color to what Arthur said right there. So NFT activity on Tezos increased for 6 consecutive quarters. It made an all-time high in Q3 of 2022 and stalled slightly in Q4, but I think that's to be expected after you made your all-time high. So nonetheless, NFT activity has been up and to the right and then very consistent throughout the bear market. So I think that's a nice consistent source of activity and users on the network.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if what you're trying to do is buy an art piece, you don't really necessarily care that like about crypto hype. It's like you're just going to keep collecting your art piece whether or not people are excited about crypto or not. Whereas if you're doing is mostly like trading driven, that of course is going to be very, very affected with the ups and downs of the market.
Yeah, no, it's a much stickier sector for sure, and Tezos users seem to be very sticky. So that's the NFT section of things. Let's hop down over to gaming, right? So gaming continues to be an exciting area of growth for Tezos, still in the early days. And you can see I've got a bunch of games listed here that have either launched or are in development. So
Yeah.
Arthur, could you talk about Tezos NFT gaming? And then I think it's also worth mentioning that Tezos has some partnerships with Unity and Ubisoft. So those should lead to further development as well with some SDKs and just name brand partnerships.
Yeah. So there's a few things coming up. So you have a list here. Tezotopia, I think, is the most active game today on Tezos. The Sudoverse also is in development, and you can see some I think some screenshots online. Is quite exciting. Pixel Photos has been a classic for a while, which is it's a really nice pixelated collecting games. Emergence, it's a very deep uh, collectible trading card game, which is really built by like a lot of industry veterans in collectible trading card games. So if you're into collectible trading card games, this is really it. And it has, I would say, the benefit of we haven't seen a lot of really good games in terms of quality in the NFT space. A lot of them has had a strong NFT component, but a very weak gaming component. And this is an attempt at having a very strong gaming component. It's really built as a game first in the space. It has it has a game that you can try and you can use today. It's getting more polished over time, but yeah, please go out and try Emergence. And then we have a lot of these other games. There's also an accelerator, a blog board, which is done in partnership with Team Misfits, which is focused on helping incubate games on Tezos.
Yeah. So gaming, a lot of room for growth in gaming, and I think we've got a lot of games that either recently launched or in development. So looking forward to watching that sector of the Tezos ecosystem grow. And then again, I think it's worth highlighting there was a partnership with Unity and Ubisoft. The Unity partnership will create a Web3 SDK and an optional plugin for the Unity asset store. And then the Ubisoft partnership is going to give people an NFT, and it's going to connect them to some of their games. So I think those are really noteworthy partnerships with some pretty name brand companies.
Yeah, so absolutely. Go ahead. No, I would say yes. Ubisoft has a platform called Quartz, which is built on Tezos for a few games. And yes, there's integration in in various SDKs, and I would say one of the best things we can do for attracting games on Tezos is having really good SDK support for frameworks, so that game developers have as easy as possible over time when they want to integrate Tezos in their game.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. I think we've got some exciting development there to come with the partnerships and all the new games launching. So that is NFTs and gaming. Let's move over to the DeFi side of things. Okay, so as we said, Tezos is the primary driver of activities NFTs, but that does not mean we should discount the Tezos DeFi ecosystem, right? So as you can see here, Tezos DeFi denominated in XTZ set an all-time high in Q4, and throughout the bear market, right? It's been pretty consistent Tezos DeFi. So that is looking at the TVL side of things. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that UVES is responsible for a good portion of the DeFi. I know UVES is a synthetic asset protocol, and it followed a spike in activity following a partnership with Ubinetics. So Arthur, if you don't mind, could you talk about Tezos' DeFi ecosystem, right? It's been fairly consistent. There are some notable protocols that have either recently launched or are getting momentum. And then again, anything we could look forward to from this side of things.
Yeah, so I would say that it's true that the majority of the activity has come from NFTs, but it's not to discount the DeFi ecosystem, which has been steadily growing. Right now, what you have on Tezos system of DeFi is, there's a lot of things which are not surprising. You have lending protocols, of course. You have some stable coins. You have swapping mechanisms. They're like swap routers, like Three Route, which is interesting because it lets you get liquidity on all the different dexes available on Tezos. Some bridges, like the Plenty Bridge. So I think it's growing nicely, and then there's some more experimental project that we see that start popping that haven't really had a lot of scale right now, but which I think will become interesting. For example, some projects around Square Tez, some projects around having these DeFi dark pools on the chain. So I'm looking forward to see those grow a little bit. In terms of what to look forward, I think that Plenty in particular, I don't know if we're talking only about Q4, but I know that in Q1 they've had a huge spike in activity with a bit of a relaunch. So they've had a lot of growth and a lot of activities, being consistently in the top one of used apps in the past few months. But overall, yeah, it's what you describe. It's steady growth of the DeFi ecosystem with more teams joining and teams launching more protocol and growing TVL.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to the Tezos community here. I got a lot of comments on Plenty, right? So looking forward to seeing the growth over there from that team. Yeah, and then I've got in the bottom paragraph of this section here, I've got a note that um, Tezos it lacks a dominant lending protocol, but where Tezos is addressing this with the recent launches of Tezfin and Upana, along with the upcoming launches of Maverick Finance and Zenith. So this should lead to further growth in the Tezos DeFi ecosystem as well. So looking forward to seeing these things take off. All right, let's hop down to development activity here. So, you can see again, Tezos development has been up, consistent if not up during the 2022 bear market. So Tezos was included as one of the top developer ecosystems in the Electric Capital report. Saw 102% increase in development activity. And then again, we talked earlier how the Mumbai upgrade will introduce WASM, and then should it lead to more development activity as well. So anything you want to highlight in terms of development activity?
Yeah, no, there's quite a bit of development happening of Tezos. A lot of developer, great development community. I would say the development community is going to become larger and have a different type of developers as well as the rollups launch, because so far we've had like a lot of core developers, some tooling, and some like smart contracts, and building a rollup is like a whole new thing. So that's going to I think bring a lot of new people and a lot of interesting ideas in the space.
Yep, looking forward to that. So that is the ecosystem and development section. Let's hop down to the decentralization and staking section. So, okay, so let's just scroll down here. We'll go down through the chart. So the percentage of supply staked on Tezos increased throughout the year, right? Overall, Tezos closed the year with about 77% of total supply staked, which is on the significantly higher side. So that's got to be really encouraging, seeing a lot of people staking on Tezos. And then we saw to color that metric. So validator stake was fairly consistent, but delegator stake increased throughout the year, as you can see on that chart on the right.
Yeah. And one thing to understand is that because the word stake is very overloaded, the delegators are liquid. So delegating does not involve locking your token. So it doesn't mean that like 70-80% of the of funds are locked or cannot move. They're completely liquid. The only ones which are locked are the validator stake, which itself is locked and is much lower, which I think it's healthy. If you had an 80-90% that were completely locked with only like 10% float, that would give you would potentially have a lot of volatility in the absolute supply, which is not good for a means of exchange or for a currency. So it's
totally
like
agree.
an important thing to mention.
Yeah, you want to have a liquid supply so you can have some liquidity across your ecosystem. And then, last two things I'll note here is the Ithaca upgrade reduced the amount of TES or XTZ that had to be staked from 8,000 to 6,000, and it led to some increased functionality. And consistency through the decentralization and staking, which is always healthy for an ecosystem. That's it for the quantitative side of things. Let's move down to the qualitative analysis. So as we said earlier, there were 4 network upgrades in 2022. Mumbai is coming early in 2023. I'm sure more will follow down the line. So can you just speak, Arthur, to the self-amending functionality of the network, the benefits of that, and then anything you want to touch on in terms of the network upgradability?
Oh, well, there's several ways you can look at the self-amending aspect. One way is to say like, oh, whatever. In practice, hard forking works well, and like having like an additional governance layer doesn't really value that much. And first of all, that's a type of thinking that works 90% of the time, 95% of the time, and in the 5% of the time where you actually do need governance, you regret not having it. So I would say it's like not having governance, not having decentralization is, to use an expression, picking pennies in front of a steamroller. So it's important. But the other thing is like even de facto, if you look at the evolution of the Tezos ecosystem and with Mumbai the 13th protocol release, in practice the governance is not just about ideals. In practice it works, and it means that the protocol can be way more nimble in terms of deployment and velocity. So very happy to see this, and it's been very exciting. The pace of upgrade has increased quite a bit since 2020, and it's now about 3 or 4 upgrades that happen every year.
No, it's really incredible. Honestly, I follow a bunch of ecosystems, and this is one of the more impressive things I've seen. So it's really cool to see the speed at which Tezos has been able to upgrade and just move forward with things. We touched a lot about Mumbai. We had the Lima upgrade in December. We don't really have to get into it unless you want to, Arthur. But there were a lot more technical things that were done with that upgrade. I think Mumbai has a little more sexy things that people like to talk about. Yeah. So again, with Mumbai, we got the smart contract rollups. I've got 2 other notes here, Arthur. I've got some validity rollups on testnet. So I know that's probably way down the pipeline, but that's something that you guys are getting going, that Tezos is getting going on, and then reduced block times as well.
Yeah. So reduced block times, that's happening. That's not just on testnet. That's happening in Mumbai. The validity rollups, and you're right, validity rollups is a better name than DK rollups. Validity rollups are they're working with some transactions, and it's something that I think it's good to have the expertise to do that in a Tezos ecosystem. Gun to my head, you ask me what's going to be dominant in the next 5-10 years. I think optimistic rollup are going to keep dominating for a long time because of the very, very high computational costs that are associated with proving for ZK rollups. But I think it's good to hedge and to make sure that we have all the know-how required to have advanced zero knowledge proof-based smart contract platform possible on Tezos as well.
Yeah, you get a lot of ZK hype. Optimistic rollups are here today, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out over time. But I do agree. I think hedging makes sense in this situation. So let's scroll down to the roadmap here, right? So we touched on the launch of smart rollups with the Mumbai upgrade. I've also got 2 other notes here. Okay, so I've got the first one I've got here, Arthur, is the development of data availability solutions to avoid state bloat. I got the core developers are currently preparing 2 solutions: an off-chain data availability mechanism that relies on some centralized providers, as most do these days, and then a public good data availability layer, which should increase throughput. Anything you want to speak on those? I'm sure those are down the pipeline, but I think it's worth noting.
Yeah. So essentially, when you do when you have a rollup, you outsource the computation away from the blockchain. You tell the blockchain, okay, you're going to be ordering transaction and you're going to store the transaction, but someone else will take care of executing it. And it gives you a big boost in throughput. But if you want an even greater boost in throughput, you want to be able to not even have to post the content of the transaction on the blockchain. And the way it's done right now in a lot of existing rollup solutions is with a data availability committee. Now, the data availability committee, typically you have you could have 5 or 6 party or more, and a very high threshold. You might say, well, they all have to be honest. They all have to sign up on it. So it's an interesting security model, which is stronger than having side chains, for example, weaker than having data availability sampling. But it buys you 2 things. It buys you massive throughput right away, and it buys you as well very low latency because you can have sequencers that confirm that the data is available. So using a data availability committee, I would say if you're building a game, for example, on Tezos where you can tolerate having this type of committee, then you can have massive throughput and you can have very, very low latency. As soon as Mumbai ships, you can do that with the data availability committee solution. So that's great. But at the end of the day, we don't even want to depend on that availability committee. And that's why one of the work in progress is that availability sampling on a chain, which works with error correcting code, where essentially the data is sharded among all the validators of the network. Once you have rollups and that availability sharding, you essentially have a completely decentralized solution with extremely high throughput. So that's the dream.
The dream,
and we're making it come true.
Yeah, over here on Tezos, yes, they are.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So that brings us to the end of the report, right? And then that also brings us to the end of this call. So just to kind of summarize here. So, Tezos had a strong 4th quarter, and overall it was consistent throughout the bear market. The majority of activity today on the Tezos network occurs in NFTs, but gaming is growing, and DeFi was actually consistent and up and to the right throughout 2022. There are some notable DeFi projects that have either recently launched or are launching soon, which should lead to further DeFi growth. So I'm expecting DeFi to continue seeing increases in activity as well. And then, decentralization and staking was fairly consistent throughout the year, which is not a sexy thing, but it represents a healthy underlying ecosystem. So that's that part of the network. And then, we touched a lot on Mumbai and the forkless upgradability of Tezos and just how that is going to lead to continued growth and evolution of the network. We also touch on some of the future roadmap items, including the data availability layer. Anything else you want to say, Arthur? Anything you want to highlight from 2022? Anything you want to look forward to in 2023? Or just any general comments before we sign off?
Well, really looking forward to what rollups people are going to be building. So that I think will be a super exciting aspect, because it's really a new type of application or solution that are coming to the chain.
I think it's going to be awesome. And this call's in February, right? This is a Q4 report, but Mumbai should be going live soon. So looking forward to that. We'll cover that in the Q1 2023 report. That's it for today. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Arthur, thanks for giving us the time. I think this was fantastic. Tezos, solid year in 2022. Looking for big things coming in 2023. So appreciate everyone. Thanks a ton. Till next time.
Bye-bye.